Your son is laughing, riding his scooter in the cul-de-sac. The sun is warm, the street is safe, until the neighborhood's self-appointed queen of the HOA guns her SUV and slams into him. And instead of helping, instead of apologizing, she calls the cops on you. She waves paperwork like a weapon and files a lawsuit as if she's the victim. But what she didn't know is that her empire was built on lies, and the moment she hit my son, she set fire to everything she'd been hiding. The cul-de-sac was supposed to be the safest part of the neighborhood. That's what drew us here. The quiet, the tree-shaded streets, the promise of ordinary afternoons where kids played without fear. I remember the first week, Timmy's laughter bouncing between garage doors as he zipped back and forth on his scooter. The light hit his helmet in a way that made him look untouchable, like sunlight had chosen him for its guardian. But innocence doesn't survive long when people like Karen are waiting to feed on it. Karen introduced herself the first day with a clipboard, a smile, and a stack of papers that felt more like a summons than a welcome. Rules, covenants, regulations. They were thicker than the last book I'd finished and carried the same weight as law. Just a friendly reminder, she said, voice chirping but eyes sharp, that the HOA keeps our community safe. Her sneakers squeaked when she shifted her weight, and her polo was tucked with military precision. She didn't look like a neighbor. She looked like a prison guard patrolling a new block. Timmy waved to her from the driveway, his scooter tucked under his arm, and I swear I saw her eyes narrow as if she were already recording the offense in her head. Day 2, the pink sticky note appeared on our mailbox like graffiti written by authority. Control your child. The HOA is watching. Signed, the Compliance Committee. But I would later learn the was no such committee. Only Karen. A single woman with a printer and too much time to weaponize it. Timmy, innocent as ever, had drawn a dinosaur in chalk on the sidewalk, its belly round and its teeth crooked. He looked up at me and asked if he had done something bad. I told him no, but Karen had already labeled it as a crime. That was strike 1. Strike 2 came in the form of a neighborhood newsletter she had edited overnight, a whole section dedicated to recent violations. My son, age 10, was listed under unsupervised minor operating unregistered motorized equipment. The Razor scooter he loved was now headline material, packaged like evidence. One evening I caught her across the street, phone raised, filming Timmy as he doodled sunglasses on his dinosaur drawing. She giggled as if the boy were a public menace. Online, she spread the footage in the neighborhood forum, the digital mob gathering to jeer and cheer from behind anonymous accounts. Overnight, my son was no longer Timmy. He was Scooter Boy, a name they hurled with venom disguised as civic duty. The neighborhood, which once promised safety, was becoming a tribunal. Then came the sealed notice. The envelope looked like it carried a court order. Inside was a letter accusing us of persistent use of unauthorized wheeled devices. Alongside it, a USB drive. Curiosity forced me to open the files, and what I saw chilled me. 7 separate videos, stitched together with cinematic precision. Angles from bushes, timestamps like surveillance logs, footage that followed my boy from driveway to cul-de-sac. Karen had been documenting him with more obsession than any neighbor should. When Timmy asked, "Am I in trouble?" I swallowed the scream clawing up my throat and told him, "No, son, but they are." My wife and I marched to Karen's door that night, anger burning hotter than the porch light above us. She greeted us with a binder, color-coded and labeled Timmy incidents. Pages of printouts cataloged every chalk line, every scooter turn, every laugh too loud for her standards. Excessive velocity, one page read. Unauthorized sidewalk contact, another. Perimeter breach. Her husband stood behind her in flannel, arms crossed, a silent warning that this was her battlefield and he was her shadow. We left with nothing resolved, only the echo of her smile and the promise that the war she had declared wasn't over. Days later, a petition appeared in every mailbox. Household 12 under review. That was us. An emergency HOA meeting was called, held not in the community center but in Karen's garage, the place she ruled like a throne room. There were muffins on the folding table, a projector screen, and a PowerPoint presentation featuring freeze frames of my son mid-scooter drift. She spoke of behavioral risk indicators like she was briefing federal agents on a criminal threat, not lecturing neighbors about a child. The community nodded. Some laughed, some just sat silent, too afraid or too complicit to question her authority. That was when I realized Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was building a machine, one powered by fear, control, and paperwork, and we were the target caught in its gears. The storm hadn't hit yet, but I could already feel the air thickening, as if the cul-de-sac itself was holding its breath. The storm broke 3 days later. I was in the garage, tightening a bolt on my workbench, the kind of simple chore that clears the mind. Outside, the neighborhood hummed with its usual background noise, lawnmowers droning, sprinklers ticking, kids laughing. Then came the sound that still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. The high-pitched squeal of tires, a horn blaring, and a dull, bone-deep thud that swallowed every other sound. I ran, dropped the wrench. The world blurred until the only thing in focus was my boy. Immy lay curled on the asphalt, his scooter skittered several feet away, his helmet twisted at an ugly angle. He wasn't lifeless, thank God, but his cry was small and broken, like he wanted to apologize for existing. My wife was already at his side, hands trembling as she checked his arms, his head, his breathing. And then I saw the car. Karen's SUV idled just yards away, its engine ticking like a predator catching its breath. The driver's door was flung open and Karen was pacing in circles, phone pressed to her ear. Not to call for help, not to ask if Timmy was okay. No. She was already constructing her alibi, shrieking into the receiver about a reckless, unsupervised child who darted into her path. She waved her arms in broad gestures, ensuring the gathering neighbors saw the story she wanted them to believe. I knelt beside Timmy, my hand against his chest, whispering his name. His eyes fluttered open, wet with tears, but he was there. Alive, pale, frightened. He tried to sit up, but I told him to stay still. The ambulance siren reached us within minutes, though each second felt like it stretched into an hour. EMTs rushed in, efficient and calm, as they lifted him onto the stretcher. His fingers brushed against mine as they closed the doors, and I wanted nothing more than to follow. But Karen wasn't done. As the ambulance pulled away, she held up a laminated HOA notice like it was the Constitution itself, thrusting it toward the police officers who had just arrived. See? See? She barked. Persistent violations. Reckless behavior. He was warned. The officers exchanged looks, part confusion, part irritation, but they dutifully began taking statements. I gave them everything. Every sticky note, every fabricated violation, every USB drive filled with surveillance footage. The paper trail of obsession was overwhelming. Karen, unfazed, flipped the script. She accused me and my wife of negligence. She claimed Timmy was a danger to property values. By the time the red and blue lights faded down the street, she had already filed a civil suit. Her lawyer arrived within days, beige blazer, dead eyes, a stack of papers labeled Plaintiff, Karen R. Simmons, emotional distress, property value loss. I should have broken under the weight of it. My son in a hospital bed, my wife exhausted, neighbors whispering, and now a lawsuit threatening to bleed us dry. But something hardened in me. Fury sharpened into resolve. Because while Karen was busy staging her melodrama, I had been digging into something deeper. The HOA records, the financials, the signatures. At first, it was petty curiosity, a need to arm myself for her inevitable next strike. But the more I pulled, the worse it looked. Line items that didn't match, vendors that didn't exist, payments funneled into shell companies with names suspiciously close to Karen's initials. When I assembled everything into a packet and mailed it to the county, I expected silence, maybe a polite dismissal. Instead, I got a call the next morning. Special Agent Reyes, Attorney General's office. He wanted to meet. We sat across from each other at a diner off the highway, coffee steaming between us. He didn't waste time. Your HOA president is bleeding funds into her own company, he said flatly. What you've given me is enough to open a criminal inquiry. In that moment, the tables turned. Karen had struck my family, but her empire was already rotting beneath her, and now for the first time the law wasn't on her side. It was coming for her. But the war wasn't over. It was only beginning. The neighborhood looked different once I knew the truth. Every manicured lawn, every neatly trimmed hedge, every house painted in regulation-approved tones. It all felt like part of her disguise. Karen hadn't just been the neighborhood watchdog. She had been siphoning money under everyone's noses, hiding theft behind bylaws and bureaucracy. Special Agent Reyes didn't move slowly. He assembled a task force, subpoenaed bank records, and looped in the county prosecutor. I became his reluctant partner, the father of the boy she'd struck, the man she tried to sue into silence, now holding the keys to her undoing. Each time I opened another folder, my hands shook, Not from fear anymore, but from the thrill of knowing the paper trail was undeniable. Forged minutes from board meetings, fake vendor contracts for landscaping that never happened. Phantom invoices approved with signatures that didn't match. All of it funneled straight into KRS Solutions, a company Karen owned in secret. The night the raid came, the cul-de-sac transformed into a theater. Black SUVs rolled in with their lights off, agents fanning out in tactical rhythm. Neighbors, who once avoided us, poured from their doorways with phones in hand. For years, Karen had made herself the center of every gathering, every decision, and now she was at the center again, but this time in handcuffs. I'll never forget the sound of the Velcro straps tightening around her wrists, or the way her face contorted between rage and disbelief. The news spread like fire. The morning broadcast showed our quiet neighborhood plastered across the screen. Words like wire fraud, forgery, misappropriation of funds scrolled beneath images of Karen's SUV being towed. The same SUV that had knocked my boy onto the asphalt. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her civil suit against me crumbled instantly. The prosecutor shredded her claims in open court, wielding my audit like a blade. "This isn't negligence," he said. This is retaliation." When the forged signatures and falsified accounts came up on the projector, Karen's lawyer wilted. By the second week, she had no choice but to plead guilty. The sentencing was quieter than I expected. No fireworks, no shouting, just the heavy voice of the judge declaring restitution, probation, and, most poetic of all, a lifetime ban from ever serving on an HOA board again. She was stripped of her crown, her little empire dissolved by the same system she had manipulated for years. The county dissolved the HOA board entirely, appointing an administrator to stabilize what was left. The accounts were frozen, the books rebuilt, and for the first time, the cul-de-sac breathed. Neighbors who once whispered apologies now spoke them aloud. Some brought casseroles, some brought flowers. One woman gave Timmy a fresh box of chalk and told him to draw whatever he wanted. He smiled, cast on his arm, and sketched the biggest dinosaur the street had ever seen, its tail curling across 3 driveways, its grin too big to erase. We didn't just rebuild rules, we rebuilt trust. The garage meetings that once felt like courtrooms became potlucks and planning sessions for playgrounds, gardens, things that mattered. I joined the new board, not for power, but to make sure the laws protected people instead of oppressing them. And yet, what stayed with me wasn't the paperwork or even the courtroom victory. It was the sound outside my window months later, scooters scraping the pavement, kids laughing, the hum of life returning. My son's voice, unafraid again. The reminder that some fights aren't about winning. They're about reclaiming the simple things someone tried to steal. Karen had tried to crush us with her SUV, her lawsuits, her rules. But she forgot one thing. Evidence is stubborn, and truth doesn't scare. In the end, her empire collapsed under its own weight, and my boy's laughter rose above it, louder than her rules, stronger than her silence. The HOA was never the villain. The villain was the woman who weaponized it, and when she fell, the neighborhood remembered who it belonged to. Us. Always us.